and types of questions that will appear on A-Level Sociology Paper 3. If you're looking for more detail on each specific question type, then please see those videos that look at a particular question type in more detail with worked examples. When you enter the exam hall and find your seat, you will be required to complete the information on your cover sheet. Your exam booklet will include the questions and space underneath each one to write your answers. If you need extra paper, then please ask the invigilator. And if you are continuing your answer beyond the initial booklet, then please make a note of this so that the examiner knows to continue marking your answer. Underneath the section for your name, you will also see this on the front sheet of your exam paper. You must answer all of the 6 questions on paper 3, and they will be on these 2 areas. As you can see here, questions 1 to 4 will be on crime and deviance and are worth 50 of the 80 marks available. Question 5 on theory and methods is worth 10 marks, and there will be a second question on theory and methods that is worth 20 marks. You also have an overview of the question command words here as well. Since all of your A-Level Sociology papers are 2 hours long, and each marked out of 80, then we can apply the general timing rule of 1.5 minutes per mark, and we'll look at this with each separate question. Questions 1 to 4 on the crime and deviance section of paper 3 will come from the specification. Make sure that you are familiar with all of the words used here, because it's reasonable to expect that the examiner will use them in your exam. There will be 2 short answer questions on crime and deviance. Question 1 is worth 4 marks, and question 2 is worth 6 marks. The timing rule applied to these 2 questions would be 6 minutes for question 1 and 9 minutes for question 2. But you might find that you don't actually need that long, meaning you can spend more time on some of the longer questions later on. The command word outline means to set out the main characteristics, and you will be asked to outline 2 or 3 causes, criticisms, advantages, disadvantages, effects, factors, ways, features, functions, problems or reasons. Since the question is worth less than 10 marks, you do not have to write in continuous prose. Or in other words, you are allowed to use the bullet points in your answer to these questions. You get 1 mark per factor, way, reason, etc. So you can start by identifying this or stating this for 1 mark, and then explain the point you have just stated or identified, making sure that it does answer the question set for an extra +1 mark. You need to do this twice in question 1 and 3 times in question 2. It would be a good idea to leave a blank line between each of your 2 or 3 parts of your answer. Remember, you do not need any name studies in your response to either of these 2 questions. To give you an idea of how much you should be writing for these questions, you should also take into account the number of lines given to you in the exam booklet, which will look like this for question 1 and 2, where each of these is a sheet of A4. Question 3 on paper 3 will be on crime and deviance, and will always start with the command words applying material from item A, Analyse Two. It is worth 10 marks, and you should spend 15 minutes on this question. Please follow the advice given here. The item has a number of hooks that you are required to develop explicitly, and you might find it easier to start each of your 2 separate paragraphs with a direct quote from the item. You need to use your quote as a launch pad for your response, with reference to relevant sociological concepts, examples, name studies, evidence, theory, and theorists where necessary. Evaluation is rewarded if it's in context. The key thing to do here is to make sure that everything you write about in each paragraph clearly links to the question and develops the question asked. To give you an example of what this looks like in the exam with regards to space, you can see here that question 3 takes up 2 pages of A4 in the booklet, exactly like this. Question 4 on paper 3 will be on crime and deviance, and will always start with the command, applying material from item B and your knowledge, evaluate. It is the question with the highest number of marks, in this case 30, therefore using the 1.5 minutes per mark rule, you should be spending 45 minutes on this question in total. As always, read the question and item very carefully, place close attention to the wording of the question, and look out for specific words and phrases. The item for this question will give you an outline of what to include, and gives you an overall guide, but don't limit your answer to just what is stated in the item. You're expected to cover more points, issues, perspectives, and so on. You can quote and develop the item, but it's not a requirement in the same way as it is for the 10-mark question on number 3. If you do use the item, you must put it in quotation marks and explain, expand, or use it to launch a point. I'll look at the specific parts of this essay later on, but for the moment just be aware that your response to this question is in the form of a standard essay. That means you begin with an introduction, have a main body, and then finish with a conclusion. At the most basic level, since the command word is always evaluate, this question requires you to discuss the view in the essay title, then look at least one different perspective, reason, cause, view, etc. And make sure that you are using what is broadly described as sociological evidence, as noted in the last part above: concepts, examples, evidence, findings from named studies, theories and theorists where necessary. Disclaimer: other paragraph structures exist. I think this one is particularly useful because it hits the assessment objectives, and therefore using this PERC framework is one way of getting into the top mark band. Remember, you need paragraphs in support and paragraphs against the view in the essay title. To give you an idea of what this looks like in the exam with regards to space, you can see here that this question will take up five pages of A4 paper in the booklet, exactly like this. Given that this question is worth 30 marks, your examiner will be expecting a fairly hefty response here, and most candidates manage to write at least 4 sides in the exam. Remember, the exam questions will come from the specification, so make sure that you are familiar with those requirements. Questions 5 and 6 on paper 3 will be on theory and methods, and as always, the question will come from the specification displayed here. Here, and here. You could be asked about research methods, and remember that you can also be asked about variations of each of these. With reference to the exam booklet, this is how much you are allocated for question 5 on paper 3. As you can see, this is 2 sides of A4 paper. The timing rule for this question, question 5, is to spend at least 15 minutes on it, since it is worth 10 marks. In many ways, it is similar to the other 10-mark question, except that it's on a different topic and there is no item. If the question is asked you to outline and explain 2 either advantages or problems of using a research method, then you need to state what that problem is and then develop this in the rest of the paragraph with sociological concepts, examples and findings from studies where necessary to illustrate those points. For your second paragraph, you need to repeat the process with a second point. Make sure that your second point is different from your first one, and as a final reminder, please note that the examiner's report states that there are no marks for evaluation for this question. These are some examples of the types of questions that have previously been asked. The command word will always be to outline and explain, and they're all worth 10 marks. Question 6 will also be based on the theory and method section of the specification, but this time you're asked a 20-mark question with the command apply material from item C and your knowledge evaluate. Remember to spend at least 30 minutes on this question. And as it is a part of the theory and method specification, you can use examples from any area of sociology to develop this in the standard essay format. Remember, this is just an overview of the question types for paper 3. Please make sure that you have revised the content fully, ready to apply this to the questions asked.